Welcome back. So, the previous videos we have been discussed about the model one, that is about the introduction to the machine tools. So, in this we are going to discuss about the model two, that is about an introduction to milling. So, this is in the model two again. Not only the milling, we want to discuss completely about the drilling, broaching, shaping, grinding. So, all this machining process will be discussed in this model two. So, first we'll start with the milling. So, then we go for the remaining topics. So what is milling? So it is a milling is also one of the process of removing the excess material. So then why the milling machines are required? Because so many other machines are there in use in order to remove the excess material. But still, why the milling process or the milling machines has been required in industries, right? That is, we're going to completely or in-depthly we're going to study about the milling. Firstly, the milling is a process of removing an excess material. Milling is a process of removing an excess material to get a required shape. What are the shape or what are the functions that can be done in the milling is that is very important. See, removing of excess material can be done by the lathe also. Then why the milling is required? So what type of machining process can be completely done? So that is one of the major factor or why still the milling machines are being required in industries. So so the mainly the process or the use of the milling machine is to provide the keyway slots and end facing end milling and threadings and then gear cuttings. So mainly this type of functioning still the milling pro machines has been required. So whether it might be normal or an automatic milling machine, still we required a milling machine especially for this type of processes where mainly for the key producing a slots or a keyways and a gear cutting. So this is some of the brief about a milling. So will be complete discussed will be about the milling process along with the diagram what is on what principle the milling process cutters has been working and what are the classifications of milling. So will be discussed in this video. First, milling machine tool. So milling is a metal cutting operation in which the cutting tool is a slow revolving cutter having a cutting teeth formed on its periphery. That is, cutting teeth will be formed on the workpiece, which is the tool in the cutting tool which is having a teeth. So that teeth will be formed on this periphery. So the milling cutter is a multi-cutting tool. So the milling cutter also what we call it as a multi-point cutting tool. So in the earlier videos, we have been discussed what is a multi-point cutting tool and a single point cutting tool. So the multi-point and a single point difference between the multi-point and a single point is where single point cutting tool will be having a single cutting edge and the multi-point tool will be having more than one cutting edge. So this is how we can able to differentiate between the single point cutting and a multiple cutting tool. See, to get any different shapes in the milling, we need to use different tools, right? So this is one thing majorly to get any different shapes, so whether it might be in a thread cutting we required in a if you want to cut in a gear teeth, so we required in a cutter. So again the cutter depends upon the type of the material. See, always the tool should be harder than the material in which are the machines we are going to use. Always the tool should be harder than the material in order to remove the excess material. So this is what the condition, but how it forms is depends upon the type of the cutter we're going to select. So based on the type of the workpiece material, so we can able to uh, form the gear teeth. So similarly, if I'm using as a slot cutter, so similarly the slot can be produced either it may be the end slot or an T slot or an L slot. So depends upon the type of slots we're going to use the different cutting tools. So to get any different machining process can be done in the milling machines. So mainly the functions of this milling machines is about a gear teeth cutting. Especially it requires a gear teeth cutting, keyways and a slot making. So this is very difficult in the other machines to make in a keyways or in a slots or to cut in a gear teeth. So that is one of the major advantage or the major function still why the milling machine has been using in the industries, because to make the slot or in keyholes where for a very hard material like in a carbide or in a tungsten or in a cast iron. This is where the materials where we're going to use this materials as in a workpiece. So similarly, it is difficult to produce slots or any keyways for very small components or a small material. So that is one of the major reason or a major use of the milling machine to do all this machining process with respect to keyways or in a slot millings or a slot cuttings or in a gear cutting. Even the gear cutting also, so the different types of teeth also can be formed in the gear cutting. So that depends upon the different types of teeth will be formed, or that first we're going to fix with the indexing table. So then we're going to fix the cutter. So based on the cutter only, then we can able to get the different types of the teeth can be formed on the workpiece. So the milling machine is also one of the machine we are used to remove the excess material to get a desired shape and a size. So what should be the shape is, so that shapes will be depends upon the which type of cutting tool or what type of cutting tool we are going to use. Based on that cutting tool only we are going to fix the machining, we fix the workpiece, then we can able to get the desired shape. So we'll see the working principle on what basis how the milling cutters has been used for a machining process. So we can able to see this. So mainly the milling principle works on this, both one is up milling and then a down milling. So mainly based on these two parameters only the cutter can able to remove the excess material, or the cutter will remove the excess material. So in the up milling where you can able to see, this is an workpiece where we have been play workpiece. So the cutter has been fixed, and the arbor where we are going to see that in depth in the machine. So this is what we call the up milling, where you can able to see the cutter is rotating in this direction. So whenever the cutter is rotating in this direction, where it can able to remove the excess material only when it is rotating in this direction. So where the feed and the depth of cut where we are going to give to the cutters, that is in the form of speed and how much amount of the material should be removed and what should be the depth of cut for that cutter in order to remove that excess material. So where continuously feed will be given. So this is what we call it as an up milling. What with this process, or whenever the tools sorry cutters having the teeth will be in this direction, when it starts removing the excess material on this direction, so this up milling will this excess material will be removed in the form of this direction. The teeth will be in this direction. So when it starts rotating the cutter, so you can able to see the material starts slowly starts removing the excess material, or we are what the shape we are going to be required, that shape will be formed here. So this is what we call it as an up milling. So coming to the next one is about, we can able to see this is about a down milling. So down milling is nothing but it is opposite to the up milling, where you can able to see it will be rotating opposite to that what the up milling cutter is rotating, it will be rotating in the opposite direction. Hence whenever the teeth is moving towards this, so it can able to remove the excess material in this direction. See, the teeth are will be in the opposite direction to the cutter which we have been used in the up milling, and the cutter also will be rotating in the opposite direction which it will be in the up milling. So it will be both opposite directions will be running for the up milling and then a down milling. So there we can able to see the cutting, or the cutter starts removing with the help of the cutter teeth, it starts removing the excess material. Here also we're going to give the feed depth of cut, so it will be given. So hence the material starts removing the excess material, or to get in a desired shape or size based on our feed or on a depth of cut we can able to remove the excess material. This is how about an up milling and the down milling. Based on this principle only the cutters or the milling process to which has been used in order to remove the excess materials with the help of the cutters we can able to do this. So next we're going to say about the classification or types of different milling machines. See, majorly the classification or types of milling machines has been described into different categories. One is based on the various types of milling machines are. First one is plain or horizontal type of a milling machine. Next one is about a vertical milling machine, and next one is about a universal milling machine, a planar type milling machine, and profile cutting milling machine. So mainly these are the some of the major usage of the milling machines in the industries. So in that again, according to our syllabus, we're going to in-depthly or we're going to completely study about the plain or an horizontal and vertical type milling machines. We're going to completely study according to our syllabus. So all the milling machines, the purpose of all the milling machine is to remove the excess material. But the major functions is depends upon the which type of material or which type of process that has to be done on that particular milling machine. So we're going to select based on that particular type of milling machine. For example, vertical milling machining process we're going to prefer plain or vertical. For an horizontal machining process we're going to prefer horizontal. Only for the profile cutting of any workpiece, for any workpiece the only the profile cutting means we're going to use for an profile cutting milling machine. So like this, based on the applications where we are going to use or what type of process has to be done, we're going to see this by considering this type of milling machines we can able to select the different types of milling machine process can be done. So this is about a milling machine types. Thank you.